In the previous section, you took steps to estimate the backlog items, implement them, and monitor them on a daily basis. Once the team has reached the end of the sprint, usually during the last day of the sprint, you hold the sprint review meeting. Let's check some of the characteristics of a sprint review meeting. First, the developers discuss about the completed items. What was done, how it was done, and what's the current state. Typically, the Scrum Master runs through each item present in the sprint board one after the other. Hence, the order of reviewing the items is mostly the order of the items present in the board that are typically sorted by priority. Second, based upon the work done in the sprint, if the work satisfies the definition of done that was set during initial state, then you as a developer show demo to the team about the end result. Of course, not all completed items can be visually shown to others. Moreover, sometimes the task may not be completed by the end of the sprint. This may be due to incorrect estimate given by you, or there was some significant challenges faced during implementing it. In such case, the Scrum Master moves those incomplete items back to the product backlog or to the next sprint backlog. That item may be taken up in the next sprint depending upon the priority with respect to the other tasks. One of the main outcomes of the sprint review meeting is the product increment. For the Scrum team, there must always be progress. The best way to show the progress is to arrive at the product increment that refers to a new feature that was implemented in the current sprint. Depending upon the importance of that feature, it can be showcased to the customer or at the very least to the internal team members. Coming to the participants involved in this step, just like the sprint planning meeting, the entire team including product owner, Scrum Master and developers must be present. Moreover, in some instances it can be attended by other stakeholders who are interested in knowing the progress of the team. For example, the demo of a critical task can be shown to a different team or upper management. Just like the other sprint ceremonies, sprint review meetings should be held on the same day and duration for every sprint. Mostly it happens on the morning session on the last day of the sprint. In many cases, it is Friday morning. The afternoon session is reserved for the final ceremony of the sprint, namely sprint retrospective meeting. Let's cover that next. In the previous section, you learned to hold the sprint planning meeting wherein the team went through each of the backlog items and then assigned to the respective team members and also estimated the efforts required to complete those items. Moreover, you held the daily stand-up meeting wherein everyone discussed their progress and the Scrum Master also helped to mitigate any challenges being faced by the team. As the next step, once the team progresses throughout the sprint, towards the end of the sprint, you hold the sprint review meeting. Regarding the sprint at Campus Connect, the team has been progressing at a very good rate and now they have reached the end of the sprint. During this review meeting, each of the team members plays a different set of roles. So you as a Scrum Master should be able to go through each of the items and look at their current progress and then see whether it can be closed or some other action needs to be taken upon them. As a developer, you should be able to tell the details about how the issue was resolved, if in case any challenges are being faced, and whether the task can be completely closed or not. To begin with, let's go to the backlog. This is going to show us the list of all items that is present as well as the list of subtasks along with their status. Also, you can use the task board to look at the list of all issues assigned to each of the team members. Also, you can sort by them as well as you can try to narrow down the list of tasks assigned to individual persons. Typically, we go to all tasks and go through each of the tasks from the beginning one by one till we reach the end of all issues which is present over in the board. So in our case, we have the first user story as to expose a RESTful API so that the third-party system can integrate. So it had got 3 subtasks. In that, couple of tasks has been completed, but one task is still in progress. Ideally, the goal of the sprint is to make sure that the team members completes all the tasks assigned in the sprint. Sometimes it happens that they could not complete the task due to various reasons. Some might be that the complexity was different than that was initially expected by the developer, or the scope had been increased a little bit. So in either case, you need to take certain actions so that you can go ahead with the next sprint. In case some of the tasks are in progress, then either you can move it to the next sprint so that the developer can continue to work on it, or if you feel the priority has changed, then you can move it to the backlog. To be more specific, it is to the product backlog. In this way, that item can be picked up in a future sprint when the developer has a sufficient time frame to implement that item. So in this case, let's say Sanjay wants to continue implementing this RESTful API in the next sprint. And a product owner also would like to do the same for this specific developer. So in that case, you as a Scrum Master should be able to move this task from the current sprint, namely sprint 01, to the next sprint, sprint 02. To do this, you can click on the task and then go to the iteration and select the next sprint. However, you notice that you do not see the tree. The reason being we have not created it. So let's go ahead and create the next sprint first. Sprint 02. And this is typically going to be on 18th till 29th. So the start date has been selected automatically and the end date is 6. Let's check it out. So 18 to 29. Okay. Location is same. Let's create it. So once done, you can see that sprint 02 has been created. Now let's go back to sprint 01. So we are interested in this item. We need to move it to the next sprint. So for this, you go to the iterations. Now you can see sprint 02. Just select the same and click save. So this item will be moved from sprint 01 to sprint 02. So this is if in case the developer needs to continue to work on this item the next sprint. Let's say what happens if there are some items where you do not wish the developer to continue, but instead you want to push to the product backlog. So here we have one more user story wherein as an integrator, I should be able to call get courses so that I can fetch all the courses present in the system. Basically, it's about the test cases. Since David could not complete this and the product owner feels that this is a low priority item, he wants to move to the product backlog. So in that case, you can again come back to the iteration and then you can just push it to the root, which means that you're not assigning to any sprints. So it basically means you're going to push it to the product backlog. So once done, the item gets moved from sprint 01 to the product backlog. Finally, for each of the items, once all the task has been marked as done, then you can change the state of that particular PBI or the user story to the done state. So in this case, since one of the subtasks is still pending, we had moved it to the next sprint. Let's go to the next. So here we have all the tasks as completed. So hence you can go ahead and complete as done. So this way, this entire PBI or the user story is considered completely done. As I said before, the goal of any sprint team is to make sure that all the PBI or the user stories that have been selected for the current sprint has to be completed by the end of the sprint. So hence, ideally, all these should have been marked as done by the end of the review meeting. Since they are still in progress for the current sprint, we cannot move it to the done state. Moreover, just like the way we had documented the list of all details for various steps involved in Scrum ceremonies, you can also document the same for sprint planning as well as the sprint review meetings. To do this, we again go back to the worksheet that we have been using before. And if you scroll above, so we have went through all of these steps. Many of the things we have started using directly in the specific Azure DevOps board. So for sprint planning and review meeting, just like the previous artifacts, you can try to capture the details. Once you are done here, then you can move it to the corresponding sprint board. So similarly, let's do it for sprint planning as well as review meeting. Ideally, this detail has to be compiled during the sprint planning meeting. However, I thought it is more easier for you to understand when I try to use sprint planning as well as review matching artifacts together. So when you are doing at your work, just make sure that you collect these details during the planning meeting. And similarly, we have got similar one for sprint review meeting. So you can complete these details and capture as a single Wikipedia page. For the sprint planning meeting, let's quickly capture the details. So the planning date was on April. Okay, the sprint goal was to get the POC ready for the customer. And then we had the RESTful API, get ready with the RESTful API. Okay, let's say these two are the key goals for that sprint. And then sprint velocity. So during the beginning of the sprint, you will not be knowing the velocity. The velocity refers to how much of a task a team can take to complete in a given sprint. So once you keep working on many sprints, you will come to know the velocity of your specific team. Let's say for the current team, based on your experience, you will be able to complete about 30 hours work of task. Then you can enter the velocity as 30. Then we have the list of participants who were able to make it to the sprint planning meeting. We have John, Praveen as a Scrum Master, and all others are the developers. We have Ram, David. Okay, venue is, let's say it's a digital event, Microsoft Teams. Okay, work items I will leave it because you can see the same details from the board. Alright, once done with this, let's go and quickly do for sprint review meeting. So here we have the board with the list of all items so that we have logged directly in the Azure DevOps. So we have this table, let's quickly fill it up. The sprint review is scheduled on 15th. We have the participants. It is the same as planning. Ideally, everyone should be present for both planning and review meeting. We have got Sanjay, James, Sunita, Ram, and David. Venue, again, it's going to be same, Teams meeting. Okay, if you remember, the team ideally should come up with a single Kaizen so that they will be able to apply this improvement immediately in the next sprint. So in this case, the Campus Connect team felt that there are many SDKs being used by the team and it has been always difficult for the team members to locate them properly. It happens that most of the time the developers spend time to locate those SDKs in a proper location. So as a Kaizen, they want to make a small improvement wherein as a team, they should be able to consolidate all third-party SDKs in a single shared location so that they'll be able to access them easily. So that's a Kaizen for the team. So the Kaizen is going to be consolidate all third-party SDKs in a single shared location. If you can notice, it's not very difficult to implement this. They just need to copy and make sure that it has to be in a specific location. And that's the USP of Kaizen. It has to be simple and you should be able to implement immediately. Once done, let's move to the board and then make a wiki page and then copy these details. So we have got planning and review for sprint 01. So let's go to overview, wiki. So we have got sprint 0. Let's create new page. For each sprint, I prefer to create a new page and capture sprint planning, review, and any key impediments in this. Instead of pasting directly, let's go here, clear. Okay, so this is for planning meeting. Okay, next we have got review. Okay, let's paste the same. So this is for sprint review meeting. It is very similar like a MOM for any meeting. So this way, if you can see from the right side, we have captured all the details of the planning meeting as well as a sprint review meeting. So once done, you can click save. Okay. So this way you will be able to compile all the details for various sprints that is happening in your team. Once you are done with the sprint review, the next and final step is to introspect about all the happenings that happened within the Scrum team for the last sprint. You then try to learn from those mistakes and try to identify those items that can be improved in the next sprint. All this is done as part of the last sprint ceremony, namely sprint retrospective meeting. Let's cover that next.